अस्सलामु अलैकुम। अस्सलामु अलैकुम।
सर मेरी आवाज़ आ रही है आपको?
बहुत सही आवाज़ आ रही है। अच्छा, एक मैं स्क्रीन शेयर कर रहा हूँ।
सर हम वो प्रोटोकॉल फॉलो करते हुए अगर सीपीडी स्टार्ट कर लें तो।
स्क्रीन नज़र आ रही है आपको? अब आपको बिल्कुल सही स्क्रीन नज़र आ रही होगी।
जी सर हम अगर तिलावत से शुरू कर लें सेशन।
हाँ, वो सही है। तो okay, please, Adil, proceed with the recitation of few verses of our Quran.
जी सर। अस्सलाम वालेकुम to faculty members, student, researcher, registered and professional engineers. I welcome all of you in the CPD webinar 19 July 2020 on behalf of CPD core team. I myself, Engineer Adil Khan, Engineer Halar Mustafa, and Engineer Navidur Rahman. First, we start this session with the recitation of Holy Quran. So I request all of you to please silent and listen carefully. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبतर। तर्जुमा, बेशक है नबी, हमने तुम्हें कौसर अता किया तो तुम अपने रब की इबादत करो और कुर्बानी दो, बेशक तुम्हारा दुश्मन हर खैर से महफूज रहेगा। सदक़ल्लाहुल अज़ीम। This CPD webinar is organized with the collaboration of Electrical Engineering Department, Hamdard University, Main Campus, Karachi, IoT Center, Islamabad, and Pakistan Engineering Council. Even today's CPD webinar is one of the sessions from series of CPD event that we will going to organize in future from the platform of Electrical Engineering Department, Hamdard University, Main Campus, Karachi. For the CPD event now, today we have the guest speaker, Engineer Dr. Professor Rashid Hussain, Chairman, Electrical Engineering Department, Hamdard University. He done his B from Electrical Engineering from NAD University, MS in Computer Science from University of Austin, Texas, USA. He has done second MS in Electrical Engineering from University of Texas, Arlington, USA. Then he completed his PhD in Telecommunication Engineering from Graduate School of Engineering, Science and Information Technology, Hamdard University, City Campus, Karachi. Now these days he is doing his MBA from Institute of Business Administration, Karachi. Professor Dr. Rashid served Hamdard University more than 15 years, and he is also a former Deputy Director Academic Activities of West Hamdard University, Karachi. Now I request with Professor Dr. Rashid Hussain to please start today's CPD webinar. Sir, please over to you.
Thank you, Adil. Before I proceed to the forward presentation, I would like to thank you, Pakistan Engineering Council, Hamdard University, Graduate School of Engineering, as well as the Department of Electrical Engineering, and not to mention that with the effort of CPD team, including Halar Mustafa, Adil Khan, and Navidur Rahman, this is possible to present this presentation. As you know that this is a webinar which is consists of 0.5 CPD marks for the potential for professional engineer under Pakistan Engineering Council. So now proceeding with the presentation, as you know that the title of the webinar is Cloud Radio Access Network and Software Defined Networking for 5th Generation of Technology. So before I proceed, let me introduce the agenda item. The agenda item of today's webinar is breakdown into 3 sections. And during the first section, we will introduce you to the 5th generation of mobile telecommunication networks. Later on, we will go and explore one of the latest trend in 5G, that is called Cloud Radio Access Networks, or simply we can say CRAN. Some people also use cloud as a centralized radio access network. So you can use both centralized as well as cloud random radio access networks for CRAN. And finally, for the third section, we will explore yet another important component of 5G communication, which is software-defined networking. So let us start with the first part of the today's agenda, that is introduction of 5G communication. In the coming slide, we will focus on the introduction to 5G communications. Let us start with, before we are proceeding toward the fifth generation of mobile communication networks, let's look at the history of mobile telecommunication. And as you see in the slide that during the first generation of telecommunication network that was established in 1979, that is designed for a wireless communication with very limited capabilities. In 1979 and beyond that period, only limited services of voice communication was available with no or very little roaming. Roaming means you can move around with your device. Moving with your device is a freedom which is not easy or in case of the first generation of the mobile network. Later on, with the digital revolution of 1990, the second generation of digital networks were introduced, which have much more capabilities of text messaging as well as roaming. So roaming means you can move around with your mobile phone from one place to another place, from one city to another city. That was not uh, easy in case of the first generation of the mobile communication network. So these are the two earlier versions of the mobile communication. During the 2G, the communication network was named as Advanced Mobile Phone System, or simply AMS. That is called the earlier version of first generation and second generation of the mobile communication. Now we are proceeding toward the second slide, which shows you the more advanced versions of the mobile communication generation, including the 2.5G and 2.75. These wireless communication introduce more data-centric applications, so you can send messages and use some data services with these messages. Especially the text messaging was the prime part of this generation, including the SMS. You can say that this is the era where people used to have voice communication as well as SMS communication. And later on, after 2.5G, there is a big service change in terms of the wireless communication. Now we are moving toward not only from voice to toward the data-centric mobile communication network. So data-centric mainly covers not only the SMS, MMS, but also the internet. Internet facilities with the limited sector was introduced in the late 90s. That is called the 3G. After 3G, we have seen advancement that covers more internet applications, including the mobile apps, which is a part of 3.5 generation network. So finally, you have noticed that a big revolution happened once we move from voice and SMS call-based mobile network to a truly fast broadband network in which we all enjoy Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, TikTok, and number of applications which are using these days. So you can say that the 4G and 3G has a very marked difference between these services and the speed and the protocol being used. Later on, a better version of 4G was introduced in 2009, which is called long-term evolution, which have much better speed. Finally, the center of today's topic is moving toward the fifth generation. And I'm very excited to tell you that this is one of the cutting edge technology of mobile communication that not only provide you the voice activity, data, broadband internet, but also the network is considering our intelligent technologies, including IoT. And we will explore these new technologies and critical other services provided by 5G network. So this is all about the different generation of the mobile communications. Now we are moving towards This is one of the exciting pictures showing you that what is the fundamental difference between the earlier version of the mobile communication and the new version of the mobile communication. You notice that on the right side of the picture, the fifth generation is not primarily meant for communication of between the users, like human to human users, like we have doing a Zoom activity with the number of participants. But the fifth generation is not only human centric, but is also object centric. If you look at the picture that we have a car, we have a house, and we have a wind farm. So all different commercial, industrial, and domestic applications and number of other services can now be used by 5G communication. In other words, if you have a wind system at your home or a solar system at your home, you can monitoring the different parameters of wind generation, electric generation. Likewise, in case of a house, you can monitor and control various application at your home, including the room temperatures, garage door, security cameras, and so on. If you look at the car, through your mobile phone, you can monitor the different parameter of your car, including the mileage, including the amount of diesel it used, including the runnage, the different position, different sensor inside your car is now linked with your mobile phone. And these services are provided by the coming generation of mobile phone that is called fifth generation. Now we can see what services and what features 5G communication is provided. Starting with the top right part, we will notice that the 5G is promised to provide you availability of almost 100% availability. So even if there is a rain or is a very windy or extreme weather condition, it is claimed that 5G will provide you availability matching of 100% availability or a close to 100% availability. It also promised to provide you 100% coverage. Very interesting part of the today's discussion is focus on the technologies we opt. These technology, including cloud RAN as well as these SDN, they are providing you the much more saving of energy for not only for the network but also for the user side. Another important feature of 5G is the battery that can have a life of 10 years for IoT sensors. And later we have seen that it can connect to up to 100 numbers of devices per unit area compared with the earlier version of 4G. So it can support many more devices like your car, your clock, your personal safety protection devices, and very industrial oriented devices. And also one of the important features is that it can support 1000 times bandwidth per unit area using different schemes, which will be discussed later on in the form of MIMO in beamforming. Yet another important feature is that the latency or the delay of providing service is very minimal. That is 1 millisecond of the latency. Finally, the very important feature of 5G communication is the type of the data rate it can support. If we compare the data rate of today's 4G, right now we are using a Zoom webinar, and typical data rate are in the range of few hundred megabits per second. It can promise up to 10 GB data rate, which is very tremendous to support number of applications. So whatever we have seen in the picture, it also depicts in the next slide in the form of the text, as we discussed that it can support up to 10 GB data rate. Delay is 1 millisecond. It can have a very minimal data latency. Data bandwidth, it will support 1000 times higher bandwidth. It has a much better availability, coverage, and two important feature in the last two links is the energy features of the network. So by using different technologies, including CRAN, SDN, it can support much better energy optimization techniques. And finally, the IoT, it can support up to 10 years of the battery life, because you know that IoT sensor are a miniature electronic devices and it will not consume as much energy as other domestic devices. So number of IoT devices now can be supported for a very long period of time. So let's proceed toward the next slide. This is yet another important slide. You look at the slide, it has two important features. One is the network society and another one is a technical driver. This presentation is far more toward the technical side, as you notice that the last two bullets are last two or three bullets of the right side is focusing on the virtualization. We will see virtualization and cloud-centric networks that is supporting the fifth generation of the network, and what is the role of these new technical drivers. On the left side, we will also explore that uh, how the user experience improve in case of 5G. Definitely, you notice that if you don't have a smartphone and you have a Nokia old style of the phone, you only have the capabilities of a voice call and the SMS. You don't have any luxury of having browsing the internet using WhatsApp, YouTube, and so on, which is possible through the fourth generation of the network. So, uh, so the so the user experience has been enhanced with the development of new technologies and the new generation of the network. Definitely, 5G will be come up in Pakistan maybe in a year or 2 years. So the user experience is one of the driver behind the new fifth generation of the network. It all not only provide a massive user experience, but it also support massive traffic volume. Massive number of devices can be supported. Massive number of services can be supported, as seen at the bottom of this slide. This has already been discussed that 5G is much more evolved when we compare to the first and second generation, third generation, and fourth generation of the network. Now we are looking at the what kind of application 5G is supporting. From the very first part of the slide, that is on the top part, the very important part of the 5G is the enhanced user experience of the broadband, which is limited these days. Still, you are having facing trouble when you have a one-to-one connectivity or voice connectivity. So network is not as resilient as the 5G communication. Later on, we will see the smart vehicle transport infrastructure. Now we are moving toward driverless cars. You know that the driverless cars and the automated vehicles and caravan of the vehicles, they need an infrastructure, a strong network of communication that supports autonomous smart vehicles over the over the roads. So this is not possible with 4G network. Remember, now we are moving toward the core part of the services provided by fifth generation of network. Fourth generation of network is not fully capable of providing the infrastructure support to new technologies, including smart vehicles, driverless cars, and platoons of the fleets moving from one city to another city without any drivers. So these are the features which is promised by fifth generation to support in the near future. Media, you can have media everywhere. For example, in your houses, you have a TV, a separate TV, you have a mobile you paid bill for and third one is the critical control of the remote devices. So a devices can support a critical operations we will see in the coming slide. Now human to IoT interface is possible with the fifth generation of networks. This is yet an interesting slide to share with the audience. So you will really appreciate the power of 5th generation of the networks because it supports both massive IoT as well as critical IoT operation. What do you mean by the critical IoT operation? Any operation which requires human safety, including the traffic safety, industrial application and control safety, as listed on the right side of your diagram, is fall under the category of IoT. So for devices like healthcare, industrial safety, smart grid automation, traffic safety, ultra reliable applications with low latency with high availability is required. This is promised by 5th generation of the networks. Equally important is the massive IoT. Massive IoT is, you cannot consider massive IoT under the umbrella of critical IoT because in critical IoT, we need much more stringent requirement of delay sensitivity, data availability, and reliability. In massive IoT, mostly we are not concerned about this sensitive parameter. Rather, we are interested in the cost. In certain application, we focus on the cost. As you look on the left side of the diagram, that it includes buildings, logistics, networks, smart agriculture, and smart metering. So, low cost, low energy, small data volumes are interested for massive numbers. So this is yet another important slide for 5G communication. Remember that 5G communication provide you a strong and resilient architecture for various new technologies, including IoT devices, healthcare, building automation, industrial safety, smart agriculture, smart metering. Now we are moving toward the infrastructure part that support these new technologies. Yet another exciting slide showing you the what kind of industries of 5G can be supported using 5G. It not only support the healthcare, uh, automobile, you can say that you can have multimedia application as well as you do lot of multimedia application using 5G. Notice that at the middle of the slide, we have a cloud, a network, and a tower. We will discuss these things in the coming slide. Yet, now we're looking at the services it can supported with 5G. We already discussed it can support mobile broadband, media applications, robotics, health, and number of many more services, which has already been discussed in the previous slide. Now we will look at some architecture. It can support an architecture of the 5G network. 5G is capable of not only supporting the new technology, but it is backward compatible. If you look at the left side of the diagram, you notice that there are small mini towers with number of equipment. Some are standalone towers, some has the radio unit, some has the baseband units. So these various technologies can be supported and that is backward as well as forward compatible using the 5G communication. So let's look at the core part because today our discussion is more toward the core part. Core part is, have you seen that is the cloud. And if we're talking about the cloud is basically provide you a service by mostly by a third party, which is not physically centric. It can be have on a on different locations. So now we are moving architecture which consists of a cloud-centric architectures. So these are more, remember that for all computer science students we listening to this presentation as well as engineering students, we are moving toward the era of programming in network. So you will see in the coming network that more and more infrastructure is based on the IT or programming centric application. So physical heavy equipments are now reducing with the passage of time, using software defined networking, using cloud technology. So we can say that we have a more flexibility in terms of architecture of 5G as we compare with the previous networks like 4G and 3G. These are all not these are all are vendor specific. Yani vendors provide you some hardware and you have to use that hardware based on their specification, not based on your specification. So now with the programmability in the coming infrastructure, you have much more control over your network. You can have service agility, means that shortening the time for service creation. You can introduce any service on your 5th generation network, which is not easy in the previous network. Same with have more diversity, provide you different kinds of system in your network. And last, not to is that we will explore that why 5G is more resource efficient. This is yet another important pillar of 5th generation of network, that this is the one of the most resource efficient. That's why it's going to be not only beneficial for the network operator for making some capital return of investment, but also for the consumer because it will promise you a very good bandwidth at a minimal cost. Yet this is another slide which showing you the different technologies it can support by the 5G communication. If you look at the right side of this diagram, now your different appliances, including electrical appliances, your plugs, your fan, your ACs, your computer, your fridge, even your bathroom shower, your heaters, your multimedia devices, your logistic application and industrial application can be supported by 5th generation of the networks through Internet of Things. So 5th generation is the infrastructure that support these different sort of new services. Similar slide which already we discussed about the different promises of 5th generation, including high bandwidth, critical operations, and so on. Important input from the consumer. This slide shows you the input from the consumer. Okay, what kind of services the consumer want in the 5th generation. If you look at the top left part, that consumer need or would like to have fast connectivity on next smartphone. Even with this today's Zoom meeting, we have some connectivity issues for number of reasons. So hopefully in the 5th generation, it will provide you much more better connectivity. And 86% of the consumer want more enhanced connectivity in the form of minimum delays and high speed, and likely to purchase a phone, and 50% likely to purchase a phone that supports 5th generation of the net. This particular slide show you another important component of the service provided by 5th generation of the network. The bottom part shows you the more powerful, efficient, intelligent, and flexible network. If you look closely, that there is a in-vehicle infotainment. Means that in the train you can have a streamline, a better broadband applications, and on the left side you see that truck platoon, means that one truck can guide the various different trucks behind it. So it's possible that 18-wheeler trucks, different 18-wheeler trucks can be traveling from one part to the another part of the country without or with minimum number of drivers. So that is possible using the fifth generation of network. It also supports the healthcare application, which already been discussed. Some more exciting features of 5G communication as listed over here. Another comparison between 4G and 5G. If you look at the bottom part, it's showing you the fourth generation of the network. Only one radio connection at a time. For example, if I have a call on my mobile phone or I'm in the middle of Zoom webinar, so I cannot have a call received from the operator. So I may have used the WhatsApp call, but not the call from the mobile phone operator. So it is now possible with 5G network that you can have a mobile call as well as you can use any activity at one time. That is called multiple connections simultaneously. And also important part, another part which is possible is called the network slicing, and you can slice the network based on your needs. And the last one is showing you the fully clouded networks and applications. Cloud network do exist in 4G networks, but it's not fully matured cloud network. In different part of the world, different companies are investing. You know that in Pakistan, Long has introduced 5G applications in the test mode. So 5G has been landed in Pakistan, but not in the commercial basis, rather on the research and testing basis. These are some spectrum for 5G communication. This is not only the one of the few spectrum, rather this is one of the uh, spectrum used in 5G communication. You notice that in 5G communication, the frequencies in is much higher as compared to the 4G and 5G. So we will discuss in detail about the implication of higher frequencies for the network. This thing has already been discussed because in the previous slide, but you have to know that from this slide that the frequency we have been using now is moving toward the more than 6 gigahertz of the frequency is expecting to gain the market. In the middle, we see that extreme mobile bandwidth. So in summary, if somebody asks you what is fifth generation of the network, you can say that it support extreme broadband. On the bottom part, it can support a critical machine communications. For example, healthcare, surgery, smart power. These are all required critical machine communication, which is very delay sensitive and required a high availability. Massive machine communication is also supported by 5G. Important information related with countries is using different sort of spectrum. In USA, they are using 28 to 39 gigahertz. In Korea, they are using 28 gigahertz. In China, they are using 3.5. In Japan, they are using 4.5 gigahertz. So different countries mostly use gigahertz frequencies for 5G communication. Now we are moving toward the foundations of the 5G communication system. Another important pillar of any communication is called the modulation technique. The modulation technique used in OFDM in 5G networks is called orthogonal frequency division multiplexing, and it is very efficient modulating format. OFDM combines the benefit of quadrature amplitude modulation and frequency division multiplexing that is supporting a very high data rate. Remember that if you have a course of wireless communication, you heard about time division multiple access, frequency division multiple access, and code division multiple access. These multiple access techniques provide the access to the scarce resources, that is the radio resources. And what OFDM is used is to pack the different frequency components neatly so they have minimum interference in between the two frequency components. And this has been used not only in the 5G but also in 4G networks. Beside OFDM, they also use quadrature amplitude modulation, which means that a cycle can carry up to 4 components of information during the one complete cycle. That is called quadrature. Quadrature means 1/4 of the complete cycle. This is a diagram showing you to how we can translate a signal using OFDM. A signal, first of all, demux. Demux is separate in different frequency components. Each component is now undergoes through a modulation technique that is called quadrature amplitude multiplexing. It is a modulator which actually drive the whole communication systems by translating low frequency components into much higher frequency components, which can which can travel a longer distance. You know that low frequency do not have the ability to transfer longer distance. That's why we use the modulation technique. Later, we are using QAM or quadrature amplitude multiplexing, which support higher data rates. We also have more advanced modulation scheme, including 16 QAM and 64 QAM. Finally, we have inverse fast Fourier transform, which is a very popular technique to translate one frequency component from frequency to time and time to frequency domain. Later on, after IFFT, there is a component called digital to analog converter, and up converter is being used to transmit the information. The negative process or the reverse process is being performed at the end of the OFDM. Now, this is very exciting to share with you that in 5G, we having a very advanced feature that is called massive MIMO. Let me read these few lines before discussion. 5G uses massive MIMO to improve penetration, coverage area, or middle band. Massive MIMO group antennas group in a single box and a at a single tower to create multiple simultaneous beam for different users. If you notice that MIMO stands for multiple input and multiple output. It can translate your single signal and transmit into multiple streams. So in case of anything bad happen to one of your signal, it can still able to receive at the receiving end. But also it also supports special multiplexing. Special multiplexing means that you can use multiple antennas to send information from transmitter to receiver, which improves the data rate because it can break down the signal into parallel streams. So parallel processing greatly improve the data rates, which is not possible in case of single input, single output antenna. So still with 4G, you are using MIMO antenna. Even in my phone, there is a MIMO antenna. Even your phone also have MIMO antennas. But MIMO and massive MIMO antennas are different. That MIMO may have a 4 to 4 antennas, but massive MIMOs has even 100 or even more than 100 physical antennas available or miniature antenna available, which is supporting a very better communications. You also note that this is yet another exciting feature of 5G communication, which focus the energy toward the individual user. For example, you are using a very heavy applications and you need a very high data rate. For example, you need a very large amount of data at your end. So this scheme will provide you energy in the form of beam that have much more data rates for even for a single user.